This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Darien Sewer Commission, and it is, well, it's kind of two things, but at the very least, it's a special meeting, which agenda is dated August 11th, 2020, meeting by remote video conference only. Each member of our commission is currently dialed in, available for the meeting, as is the sewer superintendent, a Gentile, and Mr. Darren Ostefine. Ostefine.
Fine.
Now we're calling the meeting to order about 4:38 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the last three meetings. Although the third one's not really a big deal. So let's first start with the July 7th meeting minutes.
On where it was talking about approving the minutes of the June 2nd meeting,
Yeah.
and it's saying that Craig and Reese were in favor and Susan and I abstained. I believe that Reese and I should be switched, because I believe Susan and Reese weren't there, so they weren't comfortable approving the minutes. And I believe it was you and I that approved them, Craig.
Is that your recollection, Reese?
I think that's right.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be clear, we're talking about item 3.
Yes. And where it's saying motion passed with popular vote, I believe it should be Flaherty and Hill in favor, Cameron and Hutchison abstained.
Wait a minute, I got a couple of those. So is it item 3 or item 4?
No, it's item 3.
Item 3, okay. And
That's the one where we're approving the minutes from the meeting previous to this.
okay.
I think
Cameron and Hill abstained, and it should be,
okay. Cameron and Reese abstained, and Hill and Flaherty approved.
approved. Hill approved. Hutchinson.
We could just check that with the attendance of the June meeting and see.
That's all set.
And Cameron.
No, Reese and I weren't there. We weren't
Yeah, I
there.
think that's, yeah, I think so.
It's correct. It's just we're just trying to get the words right.
Yeah.
Yep. So Darren's going to tell us when he thinks he has the words right.
Okay, so item number 3, Hutchison, Cameron, abstained, Flaherty, and Hill approved.
Yes.
Got it.
And then, yeah, up, it says Hutchinson made a motion. You have to change that to Hill made a motion.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was it?
2 lines above that, it says Hutchison made a motion. You need to change it to Hill made a motion.
Yep.
Got that?
Actually, Craig, I could have made that motion even though I wasn't there,
I don't think you did.
but I don't think I did.
Yeah.
I don't think
And
so.
for Reese's benefit, everywhere else you've used the name Hutchison in the minutes, you've neglected the T. Or not everywhere else,
Get rid
but
of the T,
many,
right?
Not everywhere.
many locations you've neglected the T.
Get rid of the T.
No,
All
the
right.
T, the
It's the
T
Scots,
is good.
they're frugal.
Neglect the T.
Right.
H-U-T.
I cannot
He's
believe
saving on,
we are still making
trying
that.
to save on ink.
It's a saving on the T. That's ink from the printer. That's good.
Yep. All right, any other comments on the minutes from July 7th?
No, I've read them, and that was the only thing that I found.
All right, can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Okay, I'll second it.
All right, that's Reese's motion and Hill's second. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? Minutes
Aye.
passed unanimously.
Aye.
Next minutes are July 29th. This was our special meeting where we got the summary of Arcadis's work to date. So that's a pretty simple one. It's really just attendees.
I'll make a motion to accept them as they are.
A second.
I will ask you to also search the document for the spelling of Hutchison and correct it. But with that note and no further discussion, can I get a vote for in favor of those meeting minutes?
Aye.
All right, that sounds like unanimous.
Yep.
that was Hill and Hutch, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Second. Thank you.
And then this, the last one is just the meeting minutes from August 4th, noting that the meeting was effectively canceled by storm Isaias.
You need a
I'll make a
motion, Craig?
motion to
I'll make
accept.
Yeah,
a second.
Bill and Hutchison, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hands, I see lots of hands and hear lots of ayes. That sounds like unanimous. All right, moving on the agenda. Setting of sewer user rate fees and the detail provided therewith.
I believe this one we need Ed, correct?
That's where we need Ed.
Ed is here. He's waiting to answer any questions you have.
Okay, so this year I decided I would give you a kind of a view of my little cheat sheet that I usually bring in. Thought it would be helpful that maybe you folks get to review some of the numbers that I'm seeing. So the upper portion of that comparison sewer service rate sheet dated July 30th, that's your number one page. I'm going to be talking about the upper portion first, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a feel for some of our bonding proposals that I'm going to be talking to Jen about really soon, because I want to get that locked in, whether we do it or not. I want to get a resolution done. So first off, the need right now for any type of rate increase is going to have to, it'll help us reduce on that fund balance draw. And I'll get to the sheet that Jen gave us. It was substantial this year. We are still over $2 million. But we do have some work that's coming, and like always, I like to warn you ahead of time. There is a need to continue to keep that fund balance at a certain level, and I don't think we've ever decided what that level should be, but it's a discussion we have at this time every year, and a good discussion. It's something that we should talk about every year. So let's take a look at the second bullet point. We've had reductions in the water use. And of course, with reductions in water use, if I was to even keep the budget at zero increase, if you reduce your water use, something's got to go up to balance the budget. And that needs to be passed around to all the sewer users, and that's generally in the form of an increase in the fee. So I gave you some water use data for the last 5 years, so that you can have an idea of what we're looking at with regards to, and this is right from the consumption report from Computil. FY 17-18, there's a large increase, 19, a small increase, and then we started to conserve water. And it's gone down a little bit the last 2 years at a rate of 3.1, 3.6%. That's significant to us, as I said, because once we start reducing water usage, then I have to balance the other side of the budget with a fee increase of some kind, or we balance more of it off of the fund balance. That's something for the five of you to decide. I did want to give you some information, which is quite an eye opener to me anyway this year. I put under I&I impacts our FY20 flow to the city of Stamford was 810 million gallons. From the flow use data, we ended up with 418 million gallons, which turns into 390 million gallons worth of I&I. That to me is astonishing. And one of the reasons, I guess, why we're doing what we're doing to tighten up our infrastructure and to continue with our ability to not to overflow. The bond proposal piece, I wanted to give you some ideas of what we're spending or what we could be spending. So there are some estimates in here. The estimate from Arcadis, that is their original contract. I did show you what the Clean Water Fund would take care of or be responsible for at 55%. I showed you what the Darien share is going to be if at 55% Clean Water picks up portions of it. We are still in contact with the DEP. Ann Strout, George Hicks, still talking to them on a regular basis. We're just still waiting for the money to be allocated from the state to this fund. Right now, our balance with Arcadis, we've spent about well, I got a new one just yesterday, so we're probably up around $185,000 spent. What I'm gonna want to do, folks, is get in front of the Board of Finance a bond resolution that says if we'd like to fund through the bonding the Arcadis cost plus what you see below that for CMOM. So what we can do is tell them that we have interest in doing it. We don't have to do it right away, but I need to get on the record before we start spending any more money that we're showing interest in wanting to bond it. That resolution allows us to do it at a later time. So I did show some from the CMOM. They're going to require us to do some video cleaning and of the pipes. So I showed you the calculation. I used $3 a foot. We're getting anything from $2.50 to $5, but this Green Mountain company gave us a $3 price for a decent sized pipe. So I used that number as a rough figure. Below that, some pipe lining if we'd want to do that.
I had a question on the pipe lining. You have listed down here that 8 and 10 inch are both the same cost per foot. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. I did. Because Bob, to be honest with you, they're guesstimates, and I think I'm a little high on the 8, and I may be a little bit low on the 10. But generally speaking, I'm just trying to, because of the numbers, the variations in the numbers that I got, they were around $75 a foot. So
okay.
I just use the same. As you see at the bottom, I could change that number to 85 or 90, but 1.6 million, 1.7 million, we're still in the ballpark there. So I try to, and then some manhole sealing. We all saw from the conversations with Arcadis and their presentation that there's definitely water coming in through the manholes, through some of the connections. So they're going to require some of that. So I ballparked some, 50 manholes, if you will, kind of looking at their map of where they highlighted the areas. So
they figured about $1,000 a manhole.
I did.
That seems low. Okay.
Based on what, Reese? Just if you have something I need to know.
If you're on the post road, you're going to have to hire a cop. You're going to have to stage. I don't know. I don't know what it would cost. Again, just thinking it might be more. That seems reasonable.
Okay. The majority of these manholes that I'm looking at are up in the neighborhood areas, through the wetland areas, where we found most of them. So no, I didn't put the police time in there, but you're right. That would be an additional cost. So at the bottom, I tried to ballpark a capital request for maybe our first year or two. If I do the second year, I'll add in another CMOM 8 miles, but that's kind of a number, that magnitude that I'm looking at right now. And to be honest with you, haven't done it before. I think that's a fair number to keep in the back of our heads of things that we're going to want to do to our system that we're going to end up bonding, I believe. And that would be, I would need some guidance from you folks on that.
Question.
Well, Ed, one quick question there. You didn't take out the Clean Water Fund grant, the 55%, the 379,452 on the total request. Is that just to give you a little buffer?
It would, but you know what? We've been waiting now for almost 9 months to hear. I'd rather be on the safe side and show you a bigger number than show you the little number. As a total anyway. So.
Yep.
Question, Ed.
Right.
How far in advance do you need to put in these kind of capital requests like this? If we put in this 1.7 mil capital request, what budget year are we kind of telling them that it might hit?
Greg, I can't answer that to be specific, but I can tell you I've done it in the past where it's been months in advance. I don't think much further than that, but I need to get that. I would need to get that information from Jen, and I can get that information for you.
Okay. But you know, I guess from our conversation with Arcadis a couple of weeks ago, you know, it's really going to be probably summer of next year before we get a definitive, actionable list and report. And yes, it would be helpful to have whatever pre-process and pre-approval process we need to have in place so we can move quickly once we get those recommendations. I just didn't know if this was too far in advance or not far enough in advance. I just don't know how the capital process works.
I think the one piece that I'm going to try to push for then at least is for the planning part of it, the Arcadis part, because we are spending that money now, and I kind of want to get that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we change this at all. I just was curious more than anything.
No. Listen, it may come back that we can't bond that, you know, do a resolution that far in advance without some a better timeline. So
and really, the CMOM, you know, we're committing to do, you know, effectively the 8 miles a year. So yeah, it's got to be in there anyway. Also, so at minimum, you're doing, you know, the 689 and the 126 at minimum.
Agreed.
And I think you've done the right thing by putting what is highly likely to be to be included in their recommendations, and gives us the money to move quickly on that.
And if you wanted to include the CMOM out 10 years or whatever our commitment is to doing the video and cleaning each year, you could probably scale that up to $1.26 million if you wanted. You know, 10 years.
Yeah, I am very cautious about when to bond stuff as far as when I bond it. So I guess we need to be, you know, maybe 2 years, Reese, maybe a third year, but there's going to be a secondary capital improvement that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this is good for like a bridge. Let's get this in the works for a year. And you know, by next summer, we're going to have much more definitive information with engineers' estimates provided to us with a schedule, you know, like, and then we can really put together kind of an extended capital improvement plan, more of a 3 to 5 year plan with, you know, bonding estimates for each of those years. But you know, that you do bring up a good point, is the 126, since it is becoming more of an annual cost, want to just come out of user fees versus bonding. It's not really a one-time thing with a return.
It's something that we could talk about moving that into operating, if that's more, it's more in line with where it should be.
Yep. All right. Continue.
Next page. We're on to that comparison spreadsheet. Hey folks, it's hard for me to hear because there's some background noise coming in. So if you guys want to mute while you're listening and jump in and talk, that would be helpful, because right now it's during Craig talking to me, I could barely hear him in between some of the things. So whatever you guys could do that'd be helpful, that'd be great. So up at the top, as always, we went through the results of this past fiscal year. I showed you our payments to the city of Stamford. I showed you our total expenditures. What I stuck next to it was our original budget that was approved. And you'll see there's quite a difference, and you'll see it on the next page from Jennifer, which is where I got the other one. But wanted to look at the revenues, almost 3.8 million. and then what we're going to be taking from the reserve to cover it. And then I showed you the percentage of payments to the city of Stamford in comparison to our rural budget. Is there any questions so far?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So on the payments to Stamford, was there kind of a one-time reconciliation that occurred this past year that isn't necessarily indicative of an annual amount we're going to be paying to them?
Now, what happened, Craig, was we added in the additional crossings and their flows. I started out at a lower rate. I had to increase that rate when I saw that we were going to be behind. And in essence, when it was all said and done, we ended up short by about $300,000. Which in the last sheet, I'm going to show you how we kind of balance that going forward. But yeah, those increases were substantial based on the money I had allocated for the budget.
I guess I'll wait till you get through all that, because I note that the budget has a lower number for the next year in terms of payment to Stamford.
Yeah, and that's actually based on a couple items that were actually some good news that we got.
Got it.
Which we're gonna benefit from. The next box down, I showed in the total budgetary expenses. I showed you what the capital in that budgetary expenses are, and I showed you other revenue. So basically, 3.8 million is what we need to cover our expenditures. And as always, I run that sheet for you. If we keep it at the same rate, we'll be at 3.5 million based on the water usage. And that's where it starts to show up. The reduction in water use coming right from that blue box to the left where it says water use, residential, commercial, and so on. Those reductions directly impact that total number there, starting at 3.4 million down to 3.8 million. Those ranges that I put in there for you, that's where it starts to show up. That's where our conservation of water impacts what we're going to generate now if we keep the same rate. Any questions?
Well, Ed, we have several projects now that are kind of offline, going to be coming online. Maybe federal would be the first one that may come online this year. The other two, certainly in future years, commercial projects that are large scale. Have we seen or project an increase from some of the nursing home, for instance, over at Parklands that may be significant enough to have moved that needle?
I don't think first of all, Reese, I did not look at that, but that's a good place to start. We have not seen a jump at the sewer treatment, the pump station at 5 Mile. Not a significant one anyway. So, but the flows that are coming.
My estimation is that one, that particular facility is not filling up all that fast. And two, I don't think there's anything to expect from any of the big three projects in terms of coming online within 12 months.
Okay, got it. I didn't think so either, but it's sort of like if we're running out years future, there might be an increase from some of those when they all come online. Yep.
If you look at the residential side of the equation in terms of water use, residential is 436 100 cubic feet and commercial is 123. Our 7,000 houses are most of the water.
I had a question. If our water flow to Stamford goes down, is there something in our deal with Stamford that increases the rate that they get?
Peter, no. The contract is specific to percentages, and that's one of the items we'll take a look at when I get to the last sheet here. But there are hopes, and I'll give you some numbers that I worked out to show you what we actually have to do to get down to that number of 12%, which is in the contract.
All right.
We're
I'll wait.
okay. All right. So what I did was I ran you some scenarios, if you will, for like a menu, like I always do. I try to give you some, and there may be another number in there that you want to see. Only good thing about it is I'm at my computer right now, and I could probably run those numbers quickly for you if you wanted to. So the next sheet, and back for me, but the next sheet is the accounts showing you our expenses from the previous year and our budget for this year. Revenue's the same, our capital expenses for this 2021. But at the bottom is the most important one. It shows us our fund balance, if you will, the top line. But then again, I go through and I update this every year to show what we have as an overall balanced fund. There's some capital work that's out there. We have capital equipment that has money in it, substantial and pump replacement, the substantial work in the sewer capital operations number. So there's money there that totals about 3.4 million that we still have that use. And I've been trying to move money into the pump replacement because we're doing a lot of work on those. But that collection system rehab number is probably the one where we're going to put the money for the capital improvements for our system. So it's already set up for us to go. But again, just wanted to show you that number as it's important each year to see what we end the year with.
So, question, Ed.
Sure.
This indicates that our kind of reserve accounts are down a little less than $300,000 year over year, but your kind of accounting hole from the first sheet was $1 million that had to come from reserve to fund operations.
Yeah.
Why the difference?
Well, I wish I could tell you that, Craig, but I'm looking at Jennifer's sheet, and she's saying that our fund balance as of June or July 1st of this year is 2.13. I have 2.3.
Yeah.
I'm within, I think, about $180,000. So I'm taking it right from Munis. The other accounts, same thing. I go right into the Munis account and I pull those numbers out. So
Yeah.
I don't know where she got her number from. So that's and I did notice the drop did not show in this whole thing, but I'll tell you that
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with her fund balance and my fund balance being as close as they are right now.
So, I mean, is there the past expenses, we feel comfortable that all those are right on? Yeah. Okay.
And I think when we jump into the next sheet, this is what Jen did. She had to go to the Board of Finance with this. She shows out our revenue. She shows that our expenditures basically takes the fund balance that she sees available and took out the 1.1 million. There was a budgetary draw she called for. I highlighted that for you. That was part of our capital draw right out of the into the operating account for our capital work. And then her fund balance remaining and mine for this year are pretty darn close. I wish they were exact. But I really can't explain the difference. But I am comfortable with the number that you're seeing in front of you. Any questions on the sheet from Jennifer? Because that was a nice one to get this year that I could at least compare something to, and bring you
Can you tell which page is that? Is that?
Says report of sewer and parking fund activities.
Okay, that's 405. Okay, that's her sheet.
Yes, it is. Yep. Sorry, the parking fund was on the other sheet, the other page next to it, so I didn't give you that. See that? Okay, let me just, there's a line for legal and engineering expenses. That is the addition into our operating budget for the legal fees, McCarter and English for the lawsuit, Curtis Brinkerhoff for the lawsuit, and for the engineering work that Arcadis has done. So we put them into the operating, and that's why you see an over expenditure of $256,000 there. And above that, you see increased payments to the city of Stamford in the comment section. That's where I upped our payments to catch up with the proposed new connections at Lake and Heather. Okay, any questions so far? Because I got one more sheet to do. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Of the 256,009, how much went to Arcadis?
170, I believe.
Really? Okay.
Hold on. Don't quote me on that. Hold on. Do you really want to know what the legal fees were, Bob?
Yeah, but I just kind of wanted to do it in a backward way.
You could have just asked. I think we are over $120,000 in legal fees right now.
So how do we have 120 and 170 equal 256?
That was July 1st. What you're looking at the numbers are close of year. We've had more work done by Arcadis and by our legal folks in July and partly in August too. So that probably didn't hit the operating budget until later.
Okay.
And Ed, some of that will come back in the matching grant, the 55% grant, perhaps, right?
That is the intent. We hope that comes back to us, and that's why I want to get that bond resolution set in stone, so we can do it. And Bob, just for your reference.
And then, yes.
Bob. Okay. As of right now.
Yes.
Between both Curtis Brinkerhoff and McCarter English, we are up at $155,000 in legal fees. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then the number you have circled down there, the 1,108,500, is a combination of the revenues that we're owed plus the deficit spending, correct?
That was the difference between expenditures and our revenue collected. That is correct.
Well, it's the revenue that hasn't been collected yet, correct? Remaining?
That'll be posted into next year's fiscal year when we collect it.
Okay.
All right. And you'll see.
Yes.
Let me see. You see in one of the revenue accounts on the one sheet back, I think it's number 3, you'll see under revenue accounts, sewer prior years. And those are sewer charges in prior years that we collect the next fiscal year. So that's where it shows up.
Yeah, but it's 5 times what it was last year. 5.5 times. Did someone say I lost them? See where it says total revenues and then it goes over to total revenues. You go over to remaining. That's outstanding sewer charges, correct? That people still owe?
It does, yes, according to hers.
When you go back a year and you go in the prior years, it was only 66,000 last year. So I'm saying it's basically 5 times.
Well,
that.
And Bob, not knowing what it was the year before, I can't tell you if that's increased or decreased. That $300,000 number, is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, okay. Because on the chart from Jen, it said 66 to, it said basically a fifth of that number. So
Well, that's
that's a little disconcerting.
well, that's generally a projection of what we think we're going to collect and what we do collect.
Okay.
I think the most important sheet is the last one, because we actually got some good news from this whole thing. What I gave you was what City of Stamford WPCA gives me as their cover sheet every year for their invoice. They give me the previous years, the current year charges. So what I did is I went and I projected out one more year. I put in the $1.5 million nitrogen credits. I added that in. So I'm looking at the middle column right now, folks, current year charges. So I added the 1.5 million that's highlighted in yellow. I did what I call a final budget adjustment. I took over the last 5 years what Stamford had spent out of their approved budget, and they ranged anywhere from 10% to like 3.5%, 4% give back every year. So they over budget. If I said they fluffed the numbers up a little bit, I don't know. Maybe they're anticipating something bad. I don't know. But so I adjusted it by 5%. We did get the numbers, total numbers from them for their sewer treatment flows ending this June 30th of this year, and I had mine already. So our projection now is at 14%, down from 15.74, which is a significant drop. So I ran those numbers in. You'll see down projected payments that we've made, 3.3 million. And it shows that we have a shortfall or a deficit. This now translates into the next column for 2021. And I go down and I make some educated guesses. I make some guesstimates. I adjust again. I use the 14%. I put the 170 that we're supposed to owe in there. And I come with somewhere around 2.42 million. And I have a budget number of 2.7 million. So I'm pretty close. Doesn't mean it's going to work out that way. But I try to use some rationale to get to where we are. Right now, the budgetary number I feel is appropriate, with all things being equal and catching up to where we did last year. We made the kid catch up. I think this is I think that, Craig, I think you mentioned it, that number was still looked a little low to you. This is kind of why I went back and I did this, because I wanted to be sure. This is probably the first year that the WPCA actually gave me their total flows before I did this calculation. Normally they kind of put me off. This year I asked Bill if he would just do me the courtesy of getting me that number. And I was able to use it. Showing that 14% is a big, big reduction in what we were spending. Any questions?
I have another question. I don't see any line here for when they're doing plant upgrades. Aren't we responsible for that too, or no?
Yeah, do you see the?
Because I know they're in the midst of a couple of major plant upgrades right now.
Bob, if you look over where it says Darien's operating share of applicable accounts. You see it?
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. There is, this invoice comes with about 10 to 12 sheets of bond resolution numbers, calculations, right down to their vehicle usage, all of that. And I go through that every year, but I gave you the cover sheet. But yes, the capital improvements that they bonded for already, they are included in that. Let me see the number, $1.1 million there, all the way to the right, 1106980.
Okay.
All right, that's our contribution at 14%.
Okay, I'm glad it's covered and we're still on the good side. That's a great thing.
Now from 15.74 to 14 is largely because the two new crossings did not produce as much effluent as we thought they were going to last year.
I'm going to say that had a lot to do with Craig. The other thing I think is starting to happen now is all that development in the city of Stamford is starting to produce more flows now, a lot of it, and I think it's starting to show up in these numbers for us. I told you I had in my head a number that we could get down to. We would have to reduce, and I want to go back to that sheet again on you, but I remember I showed you that we send over 800, but we actually only use 400. We would have to reduce that 400 number by 15 to 16%. Okay, so we're looking to reduce, I don't know, almost 80 million gallons with our I&I program to get us down to 12%.
And right now, 12% is our floor.
Is our floor. Yes. I think it's going to take us about 5 years to get down there anyway, with all the work we're going to do. And at that time, I think we go back in and we show the progress we made, and we ask them to reduce it even more now, maybe 11%.
Yeah, to give us more incentive, right, to reduce.
Absolutely. We're saving the wear and tear on their equipment over there at the treatment plant.
And we're buying development room for the city of Stamford because there's the excess capacity at the plant.
Yep.
That is correct. That is correct.
They should be paying us to do the I&I.
You know, I almost said that. Do you guys have any questions? I know it's a lot to digest. That's kind of why I gave you my cover sheet. I wanted to give you some of the points that was in the back of my head. I know how we feel, and I say I feel the same way about rate increases or adjusting the rates or whatever you want to call it. But we're at a critical stage right now before we start doing that capital work. And I want to make sure that we're solid on solid ground here as we go forward.
Ed, just one quick question. The administrative expenses went up so much from 2018-19 to 19 and 20. Is that just the contract, the change in the contract?
Let me see.
If you just pull up the 18-19 was four. The top line of your City of Stamford Water Producers Control Authority computation charges, the 2018-19 was 4.4, and the 2019-2020 was 5.5.
Yeah,
it's like a pretty big jump.
It is. They put a lot of additional numbers in there. There is if I showed it to you, it's 30 lines of code of different expenditure line items just in that administrative one. One of them has to do with insurance, liability insurance, people getting hurt on workers' comp, things like that. They have a pretty big claim coming. They warned us ahead of time. They put it in their budget, so I know it's there. But yes, that was a significant jump. In that same account though, Reese, that's where they usually put money in that they don't normally spend a lot of. And that's usually where they're over by about $500,000 over the last couple of years. I saw that trend that they had. I also made sure that they weren't charging us for any of the insurance claims that had to do with the explosion over there.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, got it.
They assured me of that.
Okay.
That's all I have for you folks.
So we need to make a motion to schedule a public hearing. That's kind of next. For 3 items, the FOG, the connection fee, and the sewer user fee. We can do that under 5. And usually when we put out the public notice, we put an up to amount on the potential for rate increase to make the public aware that our considerations will include a 0% to something percent rate increase for the next fiscal year. So based on Ed's thorough explanation of his accounting, our accounting, anyone have any thoughts on what makes sense for setting a rate for the next year?
I mean, just looking at the chart, the highlighted yellow 2 components at $6.40 and $6.45 up to a 5.74%. I'm comfortable with that. maybe even more. Got a lot coming.
Yeah.
And a reduction in water use.
Yeah. From the baseline, we're climbing out of a 3.6% hole. Plus, we've got an increase in anticipated expenses on top of that. And the 645 still projects drawing
Deficit.
169,000 out of the reserve accounts. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I'd hear higher too, Craig. You know, I'm not locked in there.
Anybody else have any thoughts about?
Well, right now we're in a time of the year where the water is metered, but it isn't calculated into the costs. And right now, it would just be my general thought that more people are home and more people are using more water. So we're sending more water to Stamford. So I would have to believe that our Stamford bill is going to be higher than we want to think, just because of this situation with all the people being home and using water at home. I just think that we have to be realistic and know that we're going to increase the rate, even though we really don't want to.
Yeah, that's the situation we're using. Again, we've talked about before, last year's meter data to project next year's costs. I think bring up a good point that we are likely sending more water to Stamford, given more people being at home more of the time.
Are there any meter readings that would confirm that compared to last year?
Well, I guess so. We ran through March, so we would have captured March. I suppose we could look at this past year's water usage in March versus the previous year's water usage in March to see.
March is pretty early in the pandemic.
Yeah, so we really have to check April. Do we have April data, guys?
Craig, you can just drive by the train stations and know.
Well, I know. But do we have April data, or is that not something we have in a spreadsheet from CompuTel?
You know what I have? I have the crossing stuff.
Yeah, but that's diluted, depending on weather and INI, and that could change wildly year over year. It doesn't really hone in on what the actual water use is changing.
We have a meter down at the pumping station at Nearwater, right? Oh, wait.
Yeah, no, we have a meter down in Nearwater, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, what does that say? Has anybody read it lately?
We read it every month.
So is it going up? I mean, has it gone up since February? That we should be able to read March, April, May, June.
It's hard to tell, Peter, because it's the flows you're going to get, or like they said, it's based on rain or no lack of rain, if you will. I'm just taking a look at the flows for the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, curious. All right. Well.
Yeah, I think anything we get from a meter in the field is gonna have too much noise in it. I think we'd have to see the CompuTel data year over year for April, May, June of 2020 versus April, May, June of 2019 to really get a sense for how the pandemic is affecting water use.
So Craig, how about part of the public hearing if Darren and I kind of dive into the last 2 years to see if we can get you.
Yeah, we'll give it. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
But on the other hand, you might have the inverse effect in Stamford with lots of empty office buildings and businesses for a period of time. which would increase our share.
Is there any way we could reach out to them before we get data and just get a sense of what they're seeing too, to affect our rate, what we should set our rates at?
Reach out to who, Reese?
Reach out to Stanford and ask the question that Craig asked. Have you seen increase, decrease, sideways? Where are you at? Because we're really trying to keep pace with them throughout the year.
Okay. I can reach out to them. My confidence level sometimes in the information that he gives me, especially when it's how are you feeling type of thing or how are you doing, is I get a very bland response. You know, I don't know. I don't know how much I want to put some trust in that, from our own folks before I would trust his response to that.
Thanks.
So you'll get us a little bit of information so we can understand that side of the equation. But other than that, you know what?
Craig, how do you feel about setting kind of the ceiling on what we may increase for a percentage increase?
Well, I think the one I could easily cross off the list is the bottom line. But I don't think I can easily cross any of the other ones off the list until we take public comment, get a little more information, and make a final decision. So I guess I would suggest that the public notice say up to $6.05 per 100 cubic feet.
I'm good with that.
Somebody's doing a lot of shuffling and is not on mute.
Okay. I'll be okay there.
Oh.
Okay.
Any other comments, Susan or Peter, on 655 being a top limit for rates that we would consider?
Yeah, I'd go with that. That is the top rate.
Yep. All right, thank you. Is that it under this analysis? Well presented, Ed?
That's all I have. Just so you, I didn't ask you and I should have. I just saw it here. I had sent all of the sewer commissioners. I believe I sent it to all of you or to Craig. I'm not sure which. So Craig, you can correct me here. The 2019 Connecticut Sewer Rate Survey done by Ty and Bond. I think I sent you guys that, so you get a feel for what all the other towns are.
I actually didn't. I don't remember getting that.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. How about I send you that so you can look at it before our next meeting?
That would be good. I would like to see that.
All right. Send. So yeah, that's all I have right now for you folks. Thank you.
Okay. So item 4 on the agenda, we've been discussing a couple of other items at length over the last several months. One is for the institution of a FOG, now should I call it regulation instead of ordinance, that would adjust the town code relative to the requirement to maintain fats, oils, and greases separator for food service establishments. And similarly, we have been talking for months about establishing connection fees for new connections or developments which result in an increase in flow to the sanitary sewer system, and establishing regulations that enable us to adopt those fees. And so those are two items along with the sewer user fee rate change that would be eligible for and require a public hearing in September. I guess let's discuss 4A and 4B a little bit before making the motion to bring everything forward to a public hearing. So 4A is fog ordinance, proposed addition to Town of Darien Code, Appendix C, administrative regulations, sanitary sewer regulations, Article 12, fats, oils, and grease regulations concerning the abatement of fats, oils, and grease discharge into public sewers. So we got the latest fog draft from Darren by email at 3:15 today. And I will open the mic for discussion. Darren or Ed, anything you want to point out in here in terms of changes or things to highlight?
Go ahead, Darren.
The commission, I believe it was the last time we got together, was concerned about a person being sued individually. So the language in there now is supposed to be more general to the party and the building owner. That's one change, and apologies for not getting to you the document that you have today, but there was only one minor change, and we changed the word ordinance into regulation because it's actually a change in the administrative regulation, not a code of ordinance. And the significance is it's a much smaller pool of people that needs to approve it. In general, it's you and the Board of Selectmen. So the commission has seen this before. As you mentioned many times, town council has reviewed it a bunch of times. Ed and I were on the phone with town council today, as Ed wanted to double check, because the next stop for these are going to be the Board of Selectmen.
So you basically replaced a person who violates with an FSE owner / operator, or a property owner on which an FSE is operating who violates. That's the adjustment. I do think that is much more clear.
Well, I just want to jump in real quick on that concept. What if the existing leases don't contemplate the owner being able to enforce the operator? It's the new regulation. I'm just questioning why the property owner in that case might be liable when it's the use is permitted to the tenant.
Well, the commission talked about that before, and the thinking was not all restaurants are successful, and it would be very easy for the commission or the sewer department to be left holding the bag. So the commission sort of pointed us in a direction, and we of course agreed to make the property owner have some skin in the game.
I mean, to me, that's where the buck stops, and a property owner could consider passing all those responsibilities on to the FSE operator, and like they do with utilities or other fees and charges.
Well, I'd only ask the question, Craig, like if you had a liquor store or a restaurant, is the property owner responsible for a liquor violation? Probably not. And if the leases aren't contemplating that now, you're kind of catching somebody off guard a little bit. I just see for consistency of other uses, does this typically translate to an owner of a fee?
If I could, the analogy, as I see it, is this regulation requires some sort of actual alteration, a physical alteration to the building. We're not talking about selling a kid a bottle of booze. We're talking about you need one of these units if you're going to be in this business at this location. And you as the landlord, if you're fitting up to lease out to a restaurant, you need to be aware of this. And have some skin in the game and make sure that your building is compatible with leasing to a restaurant.
Yeah, that's in the construction, Darren, but in the actual cleaning and maintenance, I don't know if the landlord would have the ability to jump over the tenant and perform that without the lease saying we can do this. It may not be a big issue. I'm just raising it.
Now, I could tell you that we did get some phone calls from a property owner in town who wanted to make sure that his tenants were doing everything that they were supposed to do. Kind of surprised me, but it was nice.
And that's what
That's a great, good
exactly
landlord.
what I like to hear, because when I read this, I want another lever of pressure to get the right thing done. And if we're getting lip service from an operator, you know, it would be helpful if the owner understood they were the ultimate backstop to force, you know, help us force the change on their tenant. That's the way I see it. And then
No, it makes sense. It makes sense, Greg.
complicated situations are going to end up before us with complicated stories anyway, and we'll have to make a judicious decision.
Yep, that's fair.
Any other discussion or comments on the fog ordinance? Do we believe it is ready as written to go to public hearing on the 1st of September?
Hey, Craig, let me just, is there one more piece that I want to make sure you saw in there? In section 12.5 under permits, we had Patty Gowd add section C regarding a registration fee. Because although it's in the definition, there was nothing anywhere in the rest of the document that stated what it was or what it could be, when it would be instituted or anything like that.
Yes, and to remind the commission, we were going to hold off on setting a base fee, given that many of these food service providers may be struggling in the current economic environment. So we chose not to set a registration fee with the adoption of this regulation, but we want to have the ability to set one in the future, and so this is included to give us that ability. All right, any further discussion? Before a motion, I think we'll just continue on to 4B, and we'll do a motion for public hearing all at once, hopefully. So 4B is the connection fee ordinance, proposed amendment to Town of Darien Code, Appendix C, Administrative Regulations, Article 11, Sanitary Sewer Regulations, Section 1000-3A, Sewer Commission Fees and Supplemental Charges. So this is the connection fee ordinance. We might have a little more discussion on this one than we did the last one. Where is your email? Connection fee ordinance. So my recollection of our discussion last time is we were getting very close with the words on the ordinance, but we hadn't yet set the actual fees. And so what's different in this document is that it includes the actual fees. And my recollection, and Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, was the last time we discussed this, we thought, why shouldn't we just look to Stanford and charge similar connection fees as they do, because we're all sending our effluent to the same treatment plant, and our budget and fee structure is largely dependent on their budget and fee structure and the cost of the treatment plant. Is that an accurate?
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. I would say that the commission really was original, especially when it comes to the residential fees.
Mm-hmm.
So you folks came up with something that we didn't see anyplace else. Came up with that 2-bedroom or the condo unit, that thing. And I would also say that the fees that are really quite high based on the water service connection, Norwalk, the Greater New Haven, WPCA, the commission considered those commercial connection fees to come up with what you see here.
Oh, okay, so this was more Norwalk than it was Stamford, you're saying?
I think so, especially with the commercial part of it. Norwalk and, by memory, the Greater New Haven Water Pollution Control Authority, they had connection fees that were very similar to Norwalk's and based on the pipe diameter and pretty consistent with the price range that you see here from the smaller pipes to the larger pipes. So when you get up to the $700,000 range, both Norwalk and New Haven were in that ballpark for commercial developments.
It is highly unlikely that we would see some of these large diameter water service sizes, just given the nature of the size of development in Darien. As a reference, the federal project has effectively 2 new buildings, each with a 4-inch domestic water service.
Okay, so, well, if this was in effect when they made their connection, that would be 160 grand for them, right?
180. Less whatever. And so these were 2 things I wanted to discuss. It's likely that you'll get a mixed use building that'll have residential dwelling units and commercial floor area. It seems that we should be looking at a, kind of no greater than comparison, right? Because the water from that 4-inch service connection is serving both commercial and residential, regardless of the number of apartments. So it's already been sized for those fixture units.
So be the greater of the 2, but not the sum of the 2.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're talking about by the development rather than the unit served or the building served.
Well, if you have a mixed use, you can't take okay, you've got a whatever 3-inch service size and that's going to cost you X, and you have 10 apartments on top of that, so we're going to do the multiplier for the residential, right? If the service connection is already serving those units, then I think the larger of the 2 should be the control. So I don't know how we say that here.
That would be pretty succinct what you just said. Greater of the 2, not the sum of the 2.
Yeah. So in the case of a mixed use building with residential and commercial spaces, the connection fee would be either the greater of the non-residential connection fee or the residential connection fee, not the sum of the 2.
Perfect.
And then I'll give Darren a second to write that down.
You're talking about specifically and only about mixed use. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, greater the two connection fees for mixed use development.
Yeah.
Okay. I would assume that what you mean by that is we're talking about one pipe serving two uses, right?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
have a main line coming in, let's say in your case, a 4-inch pipe coming in, and it's going to serve 10 residential units and some stores or whatever. So that, what you're saying is, well, if you add up to 10 residents, $500 a piece, that's $5,000. Or you go to the 4-inch service for commercial and it's 80,000. Well, the greater would obviously be the.
Exactly.
Okay. But definitely you shouldn't charge them the 80 grand plus the $5,000 for the residential units because they're getting the water off the same pipe.
Pipe. Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So,
And the second thing that I think we ought to be explicit about, and I know that Norwalk does this, and I think some other municipalities do this, is that if you're demolishing a building and removing a water service, you ought to get credit for the water service that you're removing, right? If you've got a commercial facility that has a 2-inch tap and you demolish that building and you build a new commercial facility that has a 2-inch tap, effectively there should be no connection fee charge. You're using, in effect, the same amount of water or have the potential to use the same amount of water. Gets a little more, yeah, I'm in a meeting. Yeah, thank you. Gets a little trickier if, when you have multiple taps or different sizes, right? But if your new tap is a 4-inch and your old tap was a 2-inch, you should pay the difference.
that is not how Norwalk has done it.
Yeah, sure. They've done it for us. We've done it a number of times with them.
Well, on one particularly large development downtown, when they did away with the service, they charged them for a new service.
Huh.
So maybe they haven't been consistent.
Maybe they haven't been consistent.
Craig, I like your proposal though.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the intent of this regulation is that certainly new connections ought to contribute to the infrastructure they are now taking advantage of. And certainly if a connection is enlarged, if a connection is enlarged, if a connection is enlarged and you increase your burden on that system, then you should pay that share as well. But just because you knocked it down, I don't think you should start from scratch and pay again. Because then you get into a house. I just had a house connected to the sewer. I knocked it down and I rebuilt it. We're not looking to get a new connection fee there. They're already connected.
That's completely fair, Craig.
So, yeah, go ahead.
If you look at the second item on the first page, 3A-2, no connection fee shall be required of owners of lots which are served by public sanitary sewer installed by a developer. Oh, that's a different thing. Forget it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for the developers.
I think we determined that that's really not going to happen in our town, but she wanted it in there because it's a part of the regulations.
Okay, how about 3A-5 on the second page? Says, it talks about a change in use. So I think you guys thought of that. The Darien Sewer Commission shall determine the amount of the additional charge to be levied in accordance with the increased intensity of use in accordance with the established formula for levying such charges.
Let's say you go from a warehouse to a restaurant, but it's
Yeah.
for some reason you didn't need to change your tap size, you know? I don't know. Because we're setting this based on the size of the water service, it's going to be even harder to take intensity of use into account for a connection fee with no parameters on which to base the change in intensity of use unless it is a change in the size of the domestic water service.
Okay. This creates a little bit of a wrinkle for us. Not suggesting that we don't do it just because we have a wrinkle. So far, the two that you have reviewed, A and B here, have gone through town council, and I believe we're set to go to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow. So review this. So what you're suggesting, these changes, I'm going to assume based on the commission's previous actions of similar nature, you want town council approval. If you want town council approval, I don't know how long that'll take.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the nature of, you know, we're talking about how to set.
Greg, you are frozen. I hope we don't lose him.
Aaron, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ed.
Okay, everybody else can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes.
Okay. Bob, can you hear? Yeah. Greg looks like he's a photograph.
Yes, he's frozen.
Okay, he'll pop back on soon.
Maybe dinner's ready, and they wanted to cut him off.
Funny, I can hear you guys. I just can't. You guys can't hear me.
Better?
Okay, Craig, sounds like he's back.
There he is.
Oh.
Now your lips are moving, Greg.
Can you hear us, Craig? Lost his picture.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you had asked whether or not we thought these changes needed to go to town council before being considered by the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
I'm happy to take others' thoughts, but I didn't see how these two changes, really relative to how the connection fees are interpreted, changes anything in the regulation that would require legal review. But I'm happy to take comment on that.
If I could just say one quick thing, Patty has been great about answering the phone and giving us a nod and a wink. Is it something that we can get done quickly?
Yeah, if they can comment before tomorrow night, that's great. Or before the BOS meeting, that's great.
Would the commission be okay if we went ahead and did this?
Absolutely.
Pending Patty's approval.
Pending Patty's approval, or with or without?
Well, you know,
With if
how
you
you
can
guys
get it.
usually like to do it is you massage it a great deal, then it goes to town council, and then it comes back. Sometimes it gets massaged a little more, like it is right now. So would you be willing to forego looking at it again? Or maybe Patty just, I'll write it up the way you said it, and Patty blesses it, and then you'll see it on the first. The only issue is if we give this to the Board of Selectmen, Ed does not want to give the Board of Selectmen something that's different than what you folks are working on.
I appreciate that.
That's right.
Does table, look, I feel strongly that you shouldn't be adding these things. You should be taking, in a mixed use structure, you should be taking the larger of the two. And I feel strongly that if you take buildings offline in the course of a development, you shouldn't be starting from scratch on your fees, whether that's residential or commercial or mixed use.
I was just going to say, when you look at the connection fee, I mean, it's really, may seem strange, it's really an initiation fee, right? So I think you're right, Craig, that, once you pay your fee, you paid it. You're in.
Well, Peter, to your point, maybe it's a reconnection fee when it's additive and you add more water supply. It's not a connection fee, it's a reconnection, an increase.
Yeah. It's semantics. I think we're talking about the intent, right? Go ahead, Peter.
If you're coming back with a bigger, it's not like the same entity coming back. I mean, in terms of that pipe size, it's a different entity now. So if you're increasing your pipe size or your connection, then an additional fee would be used. What people are going to say, or they probably say it now, here they are, they're just another fee, going to charge us again. Commission will do anything to get another dollar. And that's not true.
Yeah, the intent is that we want to capture new connections and we want to capture increases in uses. And I think if you don't take out services that you disconnect, you're doing more than that. You're trying to recoup stuff a second time.
Well,
Go ahead, Bob.
yeah, you're talking about recouping stuff a second time. They never paid the first time.
Okay, so there's a regular demolition.
So they're getting credit for something that they never paid for, just that they had the proper timing to get.
So there's a house that's been connected to the sewer for 60 years, been paying assessments or fees to support those sewers for 60 years. Developer comes in, knocks down the house, builds a new house, and you want to hit them with a connection fee.
When it's only $1,000, yes. Because the odds are they're going to take it from 3 bedrooms to 6, and you're not charging them any more for that in a house, in a dwelling here. And there's no credit given. So, and it's $1,000 when they're, I just, in the context of building a house that they're going to build, $1,000 is minimal.
Okay, so that's fine because $1,000 is minimal. Let's say you've got a commercial use now with a 3-inch water service, and they happen to knock down that building and they build a new building with a 3-inch water service. You're saying they need to pay $45,000, even though.
No, personally, I think that I kind of see that the non-residentials in the context of Darien as being bloated. I think they're too high. Because I don't see, I think this is more, this fee schedule fits better for a city than the town in the non-residential ones. Because if you have enough apartments, then that should take precedent and get a high enough fee for the connection. I don't see, other than a restaurant, for the most part, I don't see a big use non-residential thing unless I'm missing something. So I don't see the reason for these connection fees being this large. But I think it's lost on, a house, it being $1,000.
So now we're in a position where, we're hearing the desire for a couple of changes to the text. We're hearing a little bit of a desire for a second look at the non-residential connection fees. Maybe this particular regulation is not ready to go to public hearing.
Well, Craig, after we receive comment in public hearing, if there was changes that we wanted to make after the public input or even our debate, we could certainly do that, correct?
You could. I mean, you could, provided the public felt they had all of the information that we were considering at the time of the public hearing. So
Correct.
if you kind of add information after the public hearing, public could argue that they did not have the same information when they were making their comment.
Yep.
So ideally, you do it clean, and the public hearing closes that night.
Well, Craig, could your concept of the net metering, the net cost, be included in the existing document just as an enhanced line in what Darren was describing earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the clause is less any discontinued domestic water service connections to the property. It's not a difficult clause to
find a home for it.
Yeah, help people figure out how to work the connection fees. There's probably a couple of places you could fit it in. I'm actually more worried about Bob's concern, and I saw Susan nodding that the non-residential fees seemed high.
I do think they're high. I'm unmuting for a brief second. I think they're high. How much was the connection for Federal Realty that was going to connect and got their permissions before this is being?
Well, zero, because we don't have a connection fee.
So you would go from zero to $180,000.
Less any discontinued service.
Water service.
Yeah, but so to put it into context, it's 122 apartments, less than 2 bedrooms. So that would be 122 times 500. The residential portion, if it didn't have a commercial portion, the scale would have been 61,000.
Yes.
Which again, 500 per apartment doesn't seem like a lot. That would have been 61, and that's a portion of the development. There's a lot of commercial space too there, and so you go from 61 higher, and that's what basing it on the larger of the two gets you.
Craig, I'm just going to weigh in that I'm sort of in favor of the fee structure, because you're talking about charging a lot more for large scale projects, which we may never see. Yep. But the system's already aging. It's already, not completely at its maximum capacity, but at some areas, under some conditions, it is. So at some point, the extra additive cost of putting one more project in could be huge for the town, for the sewer commission to actually, increase the capacity. We've done the pumps. We've got the pipes are sized the way they are. And I think that's reasonable to say, if you're going to bring something online that's really massive, depending on where it is in the sewer shed, it could cause issues with the existing system that would force us to either currently or long-term look at increased costs to handle the capacity.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think it's reasonable.
in the past, we have put the burden on the developer to study the adjacent and downstream sewer system and pay for any required upgrades there too. And it's happened a number of times where upgrades to the town sewers were required because of a development. And that would still be the case moving forward. But you are speaking to this idea that, you know, even if you can prove there's pipe capacity and pump capacity, you are adding an incremental addition of burden on the system. And that's not really
which becomes greater and greater as it reaches the theoretical maximum capacity.
All those straws end up being the responsibility of the sewer commission, right?
Yeah.
And this is a way to share in that cost. These fees don't surprise me only because I'm used to seeing large fees like this for development projects in Norwalk and Stamford. These are not abnormal for the sizes of these projects. But most of our connection fees that we're going to see in Darien are going to be the 2 residential ones up to maybe the 2-inch water service one, unless you get these bigger projects. But if someone wants to come in and build a 100-unit assisted living facility, maybe they should have $100,000 connection.
Is that true for Palmer's?
That's my.
I don't know I do not know what their water service diameter is. I do not know what the Corbin District water service diameter is. They have not filed, neither of those projects have filed for building permit that would indicate that data. Federal has.
Let's say one of the developments didn't go forward for whatever reason and has to come back and file a new application. Will they, right now they're not being charged anything, but they come back and they're going to be hit with a huge connection fee, is that correct?
That's a potential. I guess the other thing we could talk about is setting a activation date, next word, for the regulation, effective date for the regulation. But you're right. Even if we pick the effective date, January or July of next year, it could be that one of these projects gets delayed and doesn't ask for their sewer permit until August, and we'll get a big surprise at that time with a change in our connection fees.
Okay, thank you.
Craig, I'm comfortable moving it forward with your tweak to be found somewhere in the document, run by town council and sent to the Board of Selectmen. I'm comfortable as is, if you want to send to the commissioners.
Okay. Anybody else want to give me their sense?
Craig, I think just. I think that. I'm sorry, Bob.
Ed, you go first.
Okay. I think you made a good point on when this thing would become active, if you will. I think that's an important piece to have in here. So I would hope that you guys have an idea of what you're looking at it and when it would be instituted.
Well, our fiscal year starts July 1.
Our first fiscal year, yes, our official.
That's what we budget for each year. It's July 1 to June 30th. So I would use, that's why I would use that date. This fiscal year we have no fees. Starting next fiscal year we do.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. What happens to the money with the collection fee? It just goes into a general fund?
Part of our revenue for any given year. Sewer commission revenue.
Uh-huh.
So it could, that's the other thing, new large developments, putting a burden on the system could offset sewer user fees.
Yeah. So that gets back to the old utility problem. You know, when usage goes down, rates have to go up. I mean, essentially what we have here is a public utility, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sewer commission runs a public utility. And I don't know, I have no problem with the fee structure because it's part of the cost of doing business. You know, I mean, we none of us can really foresee the future, but when I used to work for Con Edison 1,000 years ago, the money was just, it came in and was treated as you're saying, but it's just the nature of the business. So I'm happy with it, with the fees that you have, and if someone comes in and we get a $700,000 fee, I'm sure we'll earn it.
Bob, do you have any? Yeah. Thank you. Bob, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I can live with it. It's not my preferred schedule. I especially think that the giving the credit, which they were given a credit and didn't actually pay for a credit, is a little difficult to stomach, on my opinion. The other thing is we have, and it might be too difficult, but when you're going from a 3-bedroom house to a 6-bedroom house, there's nothing there. And yes, it might only be 3 bedrooms, but it does make a difference. It could be at the end of a sewer a sewer main, where it does cause a problem by adding 3 extra bedrooms on the far end of a cul-de-sac. So I mean, they're not, I don't know. I mean, I guess there has to be okay, you can give credit to a house, but if a house is going from a 5/8 to 1 1/4 inches, they're not paying anything.
Well,
So
I guess we
have it one way on commercial and a very different way on residential. We have it very bland, shall I say, and we don't necessarily have bland residential dwellings. Some of them can be almost the size of a commercial building. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, when you're getting a 5 or 10 or 12,000 square foot house, should they be just paying $1,000
or nothing if they replace the 2
or nothing? Yeah. So I mean,
so, two thoughts.
That's where I have a bigger problem. I can live with the commercial because I don't think it's going to come into play that much. But the residential, I have a bit of a problem with.
So 2 ways to solve that problem. One, we could get rid of the first 2 rows and just say connection fees based on service tap size. And if you increase the service tap size, you got to pay the difference between, if you're going from a 5/8 service to a 1 inch service, you got to pay us $3,639 because you're increasing the potential burden on the system, whether it's residential, commercial, mixed use, or otherwise. So we just get rid of the first 2 rows. Second,
well, I would keep them, Craig. Craig, I would keep them because you say you had a building that was 1 story and you added 2 stories of apartments above. you'd capture that on the per unit basis. And
Yeah, but what
I
if-
think there's
Yeah.
some validity to that too.
So the other way to do it, Bob, if you're worried about relative scale of house, continued march of large homes replacing small homes, again, adding incremental burden after you've done several hundred of them, you could do a per bedroom charge, right? So we could just say 250 per bedroom.
I could live with that.
And so if you go from 3 bedrooms to 5 bedrooms, you got to give us an extra $500.
That seems much simpler, and I could live with that.
Craig, I just don't agree with that in concept at all.
You don't like
there's no correlative value in a small home, large home for water use per bedroom. In many of the larger homes, people aren't here 6 months a year. I'd have to see
family
the
size
data.
family size doesn't change typically, depending on
Right.
size of home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really the driver of water use. It's the population in the house, not the size of the house.
Yep. But from other than Susan, I think from Peter, you and I all support pretty much. It's not perfect, but that sort of fee structure. And I would say if it doesn't work, we could always adjust it later. But I think it's equitable. I think it captures the concepts we've talked about, the differences in residential, the incremental cost to the system for increased development. And I think their fees are reasonable. I don't think anyone's going to be paying $700,000 based on the size of the town.
I like like the Maritime Aquarium. Can you imagine how much water the Maritime Aquarium uses? They have a 10-inch tap that water service connection. I mean, we need the Maritime Aquarium to get up to a 10-inch fee.
Right. So I think I'd propose we at least move it forward.
So to your point, we can change it in the future. 3A4 under the chart establishes the schedule of connection fees, which fees may be amended by appropriate action of the Darien Sewer Commission, et cetera, et cetera. So we will have the ability to change the fees without the Board of Selectmen in the future. Is that the intent of this document?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And similarly with how we do the user fee.
Can I just add something in here? I know you guys have had a spirited discussion. You folks are not instituting this until next July. I don't see the rush to push this in front of a public hearing without maybe vetting this a little bit more. You guys always take it and you dig through it and you get to the right answers, but given the proper time here, I just hate to go back and put something out there and then within a couple months go back and change the chart because we didn't feel it was correct to begin with. That's what I'm hearing. That's kind of what I'm hearing right now.
I think
throw that out there.
I think you're a voice of reason, Ed. At the end of the day, there's no reason to rush on this. It's not that hard to hold a public hearing. We can hold one on September 1st for the fog and the user fee, and we can hold another one in 3 months if we think we're ready then.
I actually like that idea because I think I would think you'd get some pushback on these fees, and to put everything together at the same time might be confusing, to put everything out there at the same time.
Okay.
I can just add, if we go back to the reason why the commission did this very quickly, there were a number of people who were showing up to the table late and getting a free connection. So the commission thought that maybe just by virtue of the fact that somebody subdivided a property and all of a sudden they have 3 lots, but they already paid their assessment. Why are those 2 extra lots getting a sewer for free? And then the commission tasks staff to go and find out what other towns are doing. And that's how you came up with the exorbitant fees. So it was meant to catch some of the people who are getting away absolutely free while other people's paid for the sewer before them, and it morphed into this.
Yeah, no, I think Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Am I correct that Federal Realty, and I don't mean to pick on them, but you have knowledge of what's going on, that they did not pay a connection fee ever?
No one in the town of Darien has paid a connection fee. Ever.
Okay. But we've assessed some connection fees.
Yeah, when we do a sewer expansion, the beneficiaries of that expansion pay for it.
Okay.
And there was one. There was where the town ended up buying a sewer system and charging someone to connect that. And it was a very small, it was almost really irrelevant, but
The token.
it wasn't a connection fee because we don't have connection fees. So you can call it whatever you want, but there was at least one instance where the sewer commission did charge somebody to connect.
To recover developer fees that we had to pay for
That is
when
an
we bought the system.
excellent way of stating it, yes.
Okay, got it.
All right, so it sounds like we need three things to further the discussion on this. It doesn't sound like it's going to be up for a public hearing in September. One, the conversation on mixed use, we want to see that addressed. Two, the conversation about just capturing the increase of a service connection and not going from zero in the cases of demolitions or removals. And three, it seems like, I guess we want to see maybe rehash our research on the user fees themselves, or the connection fees themselves, to make sure we're comfortable with where they've ended up. Any other changes or more information that people require?
Is the second one that you mentioned, Bob's point that since they never paid a connection fee to begin with, they shouldn't be getting a credit? Is that what you're second? That's
what Bob was saying.
But is that a piece of what you were just saying that we're going to look at?
If you demolish a building with a 2-inch service and build a building with a 4-inch service, you should only pay the difference, not the full fee for the 4-inch service.
Well, any property that was developed on the sewer paid to have that part of the sewer developed.
Well, unless you go way back, right? Unless the town, in the days the town was just building sewers, right? And providing that benefit.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only time people had to pay is when there was a developer who, say like a Mansfield Green, where they wanted to get the sewer up to Mansfield Green, so they were able to defray the cost by allowing the people along the route to join the sewer system. Because then they didn't have to pay to upgrade their septic. So in essence, they ended up saving money.
I wasn't around 80 and 90 years ago when this was done, but the way the state regulations read is that, you know, the sewer commissions and the towns were given the authority to assess properties based on the benefit they were receiving. So I don't know that if we did 30 miles of sewers in the 1960s, we weren't assessing those properties that benefited from it. I don't know how it was done. And that in that way, that property has paid a connection. I just don't know how it was done. That would be a good way to have done it, right? Instead of taxing everybody in the town to pay for benefit of a portion of the town, right?
I would doubt that's what happened.
Yeah, the reg reads that you can create special taxing districts and assessments, yep. And I'm sure that those assessments were relative to the sewer benefit area. I don't know.
Yep.
I wasn't here in 1960 or 1950,
38,
1940,
38.
and I don't know how it was done. So I don't know that we can say that they never paid a fee. All right. So the question is, does staff know what we want them to do, I guess, for the next time we talk about this?
Nothing on B.
Yeah, I took some pretty good notes.
Okay. So let's move on, because we've been talking for a long time. So we've discussed 4A, we've discussed 4B, we've discussed 4C. I'm going to suggest that we table 4B for the time being, and I will ask for a motion to move 4A and 4C to a public hearing.
I will make a motion to bring 4A and 4C to a public hearing on, September 1st?
Yes.
I'll second that.
With the sewer user fee rate change up to 7.48%, was it? Up to 7.38%, which is the 655.
And Reese seconded?
Yeah, that was Peter, actually.
Oh, Peter seconded it. Let's get Peter seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Abstains? All right, it's unanimous.
Can I just have, Bob Hill, the rate up to 7 point what?
It's up to $6.55, which is a 7.38% increase. It's on the chart.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, item number 6, sewer easement revisions, 12 Locust Hill Road in favor of 8 Delafield Island Road. Discussion and action.
You can forget that one.
Moving on, item number 7, Nearwater Pump Station, public access during high tide emergencies. Discussion and action.
All right, we've had over the last 6 years, I'm not going to kind of dwell on it, but just give you a recap. When we have high tides, when we have serious storms down there, we have to actually open up the gates to our pump station on the Roten Bay side, off of Nearwater, so that these folks in the Bay area can cut through our site, exit out through the park entrance, if you will, and get onto Nearwater Lane and up to the post road. I've had discussions with the association, one in particular. He says he's willing to discuss access, but it becomes a safety and issue for me. Letting folks go through that whole area right there, kind of one of our critical pump stations, trying to keep it tight so people aren't in there. The other one is there are times we've had to come down late at night on overtime to open up those gates for those folks. So it's a money issue too. I'm just trying to get a feel from you commissioners whether you see that as much as an issue as I do, or I can let it go and just continue to go ahead like we have been in the past.
How many times per year have you had to do that on average?
If I said 6, 7, 8 times a year,
wow,
it's not a whole lot.
But
Craig?
it's more than storm surges. It's potentially kind of annual high tides and so forth.
Sure.
And this is only going to be further aggravated in the future as seas continue to rise. But what's the solution?
Ed, is there any chance you could give a set of keys to the police, and when they deem that it's a public health emergency, that they would take over and allow that to happen, take control of the site?
Yeah, they're usually.
One step ahead of you, Reese. We changed the lockdown there for and we made it a combination lock so that anyone can open it up from the police department. We still, up until last month, still get calls to come and open the gate for them. You know, they sometimes will open it, sometimes they won't. So I have no control or authority over what the police do.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What would be the manner that the association could rectify the situation so that they don't have to come through there?
Elevate the road.
There you go. So a section of the road, it's probably about 75 feet of it. You probably have to elevate that about a foot or so, maybe a foot and a half. That just creates, low spots on our property and on the a neighboring property. But you cure that, as Craig would know, with drainage underneath it. You tie it in properly. Yeah, you can raise the road. It wouldn't look like it does now, but it'll look a little different. And I would never have to open that gate, not for the remainder of my years anyway.
Well, I think if the police already have the combination, Ed, I think problem solved.
I thought we heard that the police aren't necessarily always opening the gate, though. It's not their job.
Well, that would be at their discretion. Then they're in charge of public safety of the roadways.
And
right?
I look at it like this, right? So right now, and I'm glad that you have had an open dialogue with the association, because I think that's ultimately the way this gets talked out and a solution is found. They're putting themselves at risk to be relying on someone in the middle of the night having to get down there in a flood condition and open a gate, blah, blah, blah. It seems as though they might want to be masters of their own destiny and not rely on such a situation.
My concern for the infrastructure on that site is also, an issue. That is our largest pump station. Not one of the things I want to have a problem with, but having people cut through there, it's a concern. It's a concern, and I thought I'd bring it to your attention. Just looking for maybe a little guidance. I can continue the open discussion with those folks down there. More than happy to do that.
Ed, is there any way that Arcadis is looking at some of the pump stations? Is there any way that they could weigh in on the safety and efficiency of running the pump station with traffic flowing through versus not when they do the report on the pump stations?
I'm gonna take a stab at this. It's probably not in their bailiwick with regards to traffic through a critical facility. I think most of us could use, our knowledge of past history on certain events in our own properties on, hey, should we allow people to cut through our property to leave to get to safety? Well, during emergency conditions, we want to be good neighbors. We want to help them out. But I think this
it's a very
begs to have a conversation with the association to say, okay, guys, you may want to step up now and start looking at resolving what I think is a problem, but not a solution that's going to be cost prohibitive to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is it's interesting, and it is a related to sea level rise. Sea level has risen 7 inches in the last 50 years, and that's enough to do what maybe before was an emergency condition and now is a nuisance condition, and it's only going to get worse. And so, obviously the town's going to do whatever it needs to do to keep its residents safe to the extent we have the ability to do that. And we're not going to not do something, if it is a safety issue. But over time, it's going to turn into a nuisance, and it should be eliminated.
When oh, go ahead.
Down there, right? And they've repaved one road. I presume they're going to eventually repave Nearwater, temporarily at least. There are 2 new catch basins that have been installed on each side of the road going into the bay. I don't know whether you know that or knew that. I can't imagine that they're going to solve the problem. But I can't imagine how big the catch basins would have to be. But let me say this. When they did the road that they repaved, on the area that was being flooded, they put in, must have been 6 or 7 very big dry wells. So when they redo that road, maybe they're planning to do that. I don't know. Because although I live down there, I'm not really a part of the association.
When I toured the facility down there, I was understood that people are parking their cars there in high tide events. They're actually leaving their cars on the sewer commission property, sewer department property. And are not boats also being stored there? Neighbors'
Well, the
boats?
boats belong to the town. As
Yeah,
far as
the
I
boats
know.
belong to Parks and Rec in the
Oh.
town, and the cars now have been removed and
Oh, okay.
posted for no parking out front, Susan.
Okay.
Right.
Even during the high tide events and the storm events, people are not, I thought they were opening the gates and people were bringing their cars up there so they could get out and parking them, not parking them now.
No.
I haven't seen that lately.
Okay. I thought that was problematic, having people parking their cars, getting out of the cars, walking back to their properties and having everything be open during a storm event seemed problematic.
No,
The problem is the entryway between those pillars, and for maybe, I don't know, a couple 100 feet beyond that. So when they repair the road, I assume they'll put in a lot of dry wells. Maybe that will solve it for a while. I don't know. Leave that to the fellows like Craig Flaherty who do that kind of work, right? Or design.
So if whoever's talking with them should let them know that this is coming. So they should design it so that they can get in and out of their area on their own without coming through the sewer commission property. Correct?
I guess to answer your question, Ed, you have concerns with providing kind of open public access in an unmonitored fashion to a critical facility in times of flood several times a year and having them rely on that more frequently. And it sounds to me, and the commissioners can correct me if I'm wrong, that the consensus of the commission is that we agree with you, that it is not a condition that we would like to continue, right? We're going to be cooperative and we're going to be helpful, but we would all prefer to decouple the requirements for access from the sewage pump station.
Couldn't agree more.
So I have your permission to continue the discussion with trying to resolve this issue with the association?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the consensus of the commission, my estimate.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Superintendent's report, item 8.
Okay. Our I&I study. I spoke to Arcadis yesterday. We're still waiting on their report. Had a little issue this last week. Some of the people that were working from home had no power from home. So it'll be hopefully next week sometime that we'll get the report that they promised us when we had that special meeting to review the results that they had found. Seagate pump station upgrade. Darren, if you could just touch base on where we are with the electrical RFP and standing with the progress.
Eversource was all set to make their final pull with the wires from the YMCA to our pump station and just get out ahead of us and temporarily wire it. And then the storm hit. I forwarded all of the drawings and documents to our guy, Anthony Campanella. So I know he will be reaching out in the next couple of days to some electricians that are qualified to do the job to collect prices from them.
Okay. Is that good? Darren, you're set?
Yes.
All right.
I'm interested in this next one.
Okay. Well, like every storm, it gets to test our infrastructure. So it put to the test 1, 2, 3, 4 of our pump stations. Seagate went on generator, so did Andrews Drive, West Avenue, Post Road, and Nearwater. But the problems where we had were at Seagate with the new generator. So we ended up having to rent one. So we hooked ourselves up. So we had no overflows, which is any of these types of storms is what you beg for going out. So, but what you're not begging for is the brand new generator to not function properly. So we had Kingsley out there during the storm. He rented a generator, got it up and running. It did that for a part of a day, and then the power came back on Seagate. So we're in the process of trying to figure out what's wrong with that generator, but that kind of resolved itself with the power going back on. Andrews Drive, we were waiting for a part for the generator anyway. The good thing about that system over there, it's all low pressure to Andrews Drive's pump station. So with the power out in that area, nobody was using their pumps anyway. So we got very little flow. We did, once Seagate's was done with the rental, we moved the rental to Andrews Drive. It stayed there for the remainder of the storm. We got power back over there on Sunday. And the last one was West Avenue we had a problem with. That engine, just the water pump went on it. So we ended up overheating after 20 minutes or so if we let the generator run. So we ended up manning the station every 4 hours, coming in, starting the generator, pumping it down, and making sure we didn't have any overflows, and then moving on. So we did that for until I think it was Saturday. We had West Avenue go back on. So the guys did a great job. They responded to everything. They didn't panic. We had answers to problems. We had vendors show up when we called them. I'm a little disappointed in the Seagate generator. We'll get answers to that. But all in all, our system did okay. Our system did okay.
And what's the answer on the West Ave generator? Does it need to be replaced or rehauled, or?
We have a new water pump coming this Friday. We're going to change it and see if that's the problem. Our mechanics, not the Kingsley one, our mechanic believes that we need to take that radiator out of there also, kind of flush it, do some maintenance on that and put it back in place. He can do that work with a little bit of help. So we're gonna strip it down once we get clear of all this, the mess that we're cleaning up out there, and we get the new water pump in to see if it responds well to it.
Well, largely that is excellent news that through extended power outages at multiple pump stations that we were able to operate through the storm with 0 overflows. That's fantastic. And thank you for your oversight and quick action. And please thank the guys that are out there in the field for their oversight and quick action as well.
Absolutely. Just so you know, when Nearwater went on generator, that's always the last one you want to see running on generator.
Oh, gosh.
And it did phenomenal. I think Friday we got Nearwater back, but it ran for 3.5, 4 days. Offshore Diesel came. They do our maintenance for us. They showed up every day. We did oil change outs on the fly. It went smooth, but it's very nerve-wracking not knowing if that station's going to stay up and running. So the guys did a great job.
Good to hear. Thank you very much. That's amazing. All right, that's the end of, anything else on the superintendent's report that's not on here? Yep, Darren's got something.
I'd like to go back if it's okay. You made a motion on item number 4 and 5. I don't know if those were taken together. The item 4 was a motion to approve the documents going forward. And item 5 was a motion to proceed with the public hearing. Did you do those together?
I heard Bob Hill create a motion that did them together, scheduling the hearing for September 1st.
Okay. So that was 4 and 5 together.
We didn't mention the time though, so if you want to be, I mean, I had assumed it would be 4:30 along with all of our meetings.
Yes, 4:30.
What's that?
4:30,
Yes,
right?
4:30. Yes.
4:30.
Okay. Anything else on the super, are you happy, Darren?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the superintendent's report? Before yeah.
Can I just give kudos because I've been out and had to work in those conditions and doing that stuff. And number one, you're out for extended hours, and it's after a while it gets difficult to concentrate. So kudos that there was no problems there. And then they also have to leave their family and their house and be out there working on, the town things. So I appreciate what they do, having done it myself.
Well said. Any new business? I'm going to go over just with one item. Any new business that we need discussing? Hearing none. The last item prior to adjournment is executive session. We have 2 matters to potentially discuss under executive session, pending claim and a personnel matter. So I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
So moved.
All right, we got a first by Bob and a second by Reese. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And unanimous. We're now in executive session, and I'll ask Darren to stop recording the meeting.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, the Sewer Commission is now out of executive session and back to its regular meeting. The
No
final
action
item,
taken. Excuse me.
no actions taken during executive session. And the final item on the agenda is for Peter to adjourn us.
Yes, I make a motion that we adjourn. And my telephone is about to go out too, so.
All right, do we get a second?
Second.
All
right, Bob seconds. All those in favor, aye. Thank you very
Aye.
much. Darren, you can stop recording now. And we'll talk about how you get the links over to Jim at that point.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.